Rain drizzled against the vast windows of the top-floor penthouse, soft and steady, like the sound of distant whispers. Inside, the lights were dim, casting a golden hue over the sleek furniture and polished floors. Alexander Kane, the 36-year-old billionaire CEO of Kane Enterprises, sat back on his couch, a half-empty glass of scotch in his hand. His life was perfect, at least from the outside. Every magazine called him a genius. Every investor wanted a piece of his success. But beneath the luxury and power, Alexander lived in silence. No laughter, no warmth, no one waiting for him at home. Then came Lila, a timid maid who spoke so softly that even the wind seemed louder than her voice. She had joined his household staff 3 months ago. While others treated their work as routine, she treated everything she touched with care. His suits were pressed without a crease. His office smelled faintly of lavender, and somehow there was always tea on his desk at the exact temperature he liked. He noticed, but never said a word. And yet her quiet kindness unsettled him. Why was she so gentle with a man like him? Someone who had built his life on sharp edges and cold business. So tonight he decided to find out. He told the other servants to leave early and reclined on the couch as though exhausted from the day. He loosened his tie, closed his eyes, and pretended to fall asleep. But every muscle in his body was alert, listening. After a few minutes he heard it, the faint squeak of the cleaning cart's wheels. The soft padding of footsteps. Lila entered the room. She moved like a shadow, quiet, careful, respectful. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands framing her face. She didn't speak, didn't even hum as she dusted the bookshelves and rearranged the cushions with delicate precision. When she approached the couch, she paused. Alexander's heart slowed, his breathing shallow. Through his barely opened eyes he could see her expression, hesitant, almost tender. She leaned forward slightly, studying his face. There was something heartbreaking in her eyes, something he didn't expect to see, pity. "Poor man," she whispered softly. "You look so tired." Alexander nearly opened his eyes then, but something in her voice rooted him to the spot. Lila sighed quietly, setting down her duster. She reached for the edge of the blanket that had slipped to the floor and gently pulled it up to cover him. Her movements were slow, careful, as though she was afraid to wake him. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she did something that made his heart stop. She brushed a hand through his hair, the lightest touch, barely there, but full of warmth he hadn't felt in years. Her fingers trembled as she whispered, almost to herself, "You work too hard. You should let someone take care of you just for once." Her voice cracked slightly at the end. Then she straightened up, blinking away a tear, and turned to leave. Alexander's chest felt tight. In that instant, the empire he had built felt weightless, meaningless compared to the simple kindness of a maid who thought no one was watching. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his world had shifted. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with quiet efficiency again, but for Alexander, nothing felt the same. He sat at the breakfast table, the morning newspaper spread before him, but he wasn't reading. His thoughts kept drifting back to the night before, to her voice, her trembling hand, her words that had reached deeper than any deal, any fortune ever could. When Lila entered the dining hall to collect the dishes, her steps were small, careful. She hadn't expected him to be there. The moment their eyes met, she froze. "Good morning, sir," she said quickly, lowering her gaze. "Good morning," Alexander replied, his tone unreadable. "Lila, could you come here for a moment?" Her heart stuttered. She nodded, walking toward him slowly, clutching the silver tray in her hands. "Yes, sir?" He studied her face for a long moment, those clear, honest eyes, the faint exhaustion that hard work had etched beneath them. Finally, he spoke quietly, almost too softly for her to hear. "Last night, when you thought I was asleep, you said something." Lila's breath caught. Her grip on the tray tightened. "You were awake?" His lips curved slightly, though not mockingly. "I was. I wanted to see what kind of person you really are." Color drained from her face. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overstep." He interrupted her gently. "Lila, don't apologize." She blinked up at him in confusion. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "People usually see me as a name, as money, as power. No one's ever looked at me like I'm just human." Until you did? Tears welled in her eyes. I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable, she stammered. You just look so lonely. The words hit harder than she could have known. Alexander lowered his gaze, his voice quieter now. Maybe I am. Silence filled the room, soft, heavy, full of meaning. Then he stood, straightened his jacket, and looked at her again. Have breakfast with me, Lila. Her eyes widened. Sir, I can't. It wouldn't be proper. Please, he said simply, and there was no command in his voice this time, only a quiet request. After a long pause, she nodded. He gestured to the seat across from him, and she sat down, trembling slightly. For the first time, Alexander poured someone else a cup of coffee with his own hands. You know, he said with a faint smile, you're the only one who's ever told me to rest. She blushed, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Someone had to. He chuckled softly, and for the first time in years, the sound didn't feel forced. Outside, sunlight spilled into the room, brushing against their faces. It was quiet, unspoken, fragile, but something new had begun to bloom between the cold CEO and the shy maid who dared to show him kindness. And deep down, Alexander knew. One act of care had awakened something in him he never thought he'd feel again, a heartbeat that wasn't for business, but for her.